I'm Renee Jones and I work in events and media here at ASPI. So every now and then I like to sit down with one of ASPI's experts and ask them, what's going on? Today I'm joined by Dr Rod Lyon, a Senior Fellow here at ASPI. Thanks for being here, Rod.
Not a problem, Renee. What can we talk about?
Well, I wanted to sit down with you and ask you a few questions about the North Korean nuclear missile crisis.
Sure.
Mostly because I'm petrified and I don't really understand what's going on and how we got here.
Well, I don't think you should be petrified, but I think you should have a sort of medium-term concern about where the issue is going. And that's because the issue has quickened abruptly over the last 6 months, and that's to do with the pace of North Korean missile testing, and it's to do with President Trump's rhetoric coming out of the White House.
So I wanted to touch base first on North Koreans testing. What are their current capabilities when it comes to nuclear weapons?
Well, if we take the history of their nuclear testing, by the 5th test that they did in September last year, we think they have a nuclear device that is about the equivalent of the Hiroshima-sized bomb from 1945. It's not highly advanced nuclear technology, but it's certainly powerful enough to make a mess of a city-type target. On terms of missiles, what we're mainly watching them do is develop their range on the missile technology they have. And we've seen them move out to both intermediate range ballistic missile capabilities and then out to intercontinental range ballistic missile capabilities. So they do have the capability to target at intercontinental ranges. We're uncertain how heavy the payload is on the warhead tests that they're doing. But I think we can say that it's only a matter of time before they can do a fully fledged ICBM capable of targeting Washington.
Selfish follow-up question, is it capable of targeting Australia?
Yes.
Excellent. So how exactly have we gotten to this point? Have we been doing anything to try and prevent it, and why has that not worked?
I think on the whole the West has been too trapped in a policy of delay and denial in relation to North Korea. And that's because we always thought North Korea was moving relatively slowly and that an off-ramp would occur at a certain point before we hit a real crisis. And the trouble is those off-ramps haven't emerged. And now we're actually facing a situation in which only serious choices really await us. It could be that even at this late day, diplomacy and sanctions start to work. But if they don't, I don't think long-term deterrence is going to be a solution. And that's because it's very hard to arrange a deterrence relationship between a superpower and a pariah state. And that's because the pariah state has no equity in the international order. And we can't allow the pariah state to have the capability to pull down that order on the day of its own choosing. So if deterrence won't work at one extreme, and diplomacy and sanctions don't work for easier solutions, then I think a military solution awaits us.
So that military solution being North Korea gets taken out or Kim Jong-un gets taken out, and is the problem there China's response?
Well, the part of the solution, part of the problem is China's response, but part of the problem is also North Korea's response. Mm-hmm. North Korea has its own escalation options in the event of military attack, and those would be potentially greatly destructive for both South Korea and Japan.
Okay, and potentially Guam at this point. Are those threats, are they capable of carrying those out?
They are capable of carrying them out, but I don't think they're on a race to carry them out anytime soon either. At the moment, what they say is they have a plan for Guam. They don't actually, and I think in that statement itself, they've given themselves an out on how fast they move down the track towards greater military options.
And this seems to be a lot in response to Trump's rhetoric, which you mentioned earlier is part of the problem. He's been saying things like they'll be raining down fire and fury, but on the offhand, he's also said some no nukes comments, that he's actually thinks that it's more dangerous than climate change and that the world should go no nuclear.
Yep.
What do we think about Trump's rhetoric at the moment?
The messaging from the White House is all over the place. And the trouble is that when threats are made, they aren't made terribly cogently. Trump talks about military options being locked and loaded, whatever that means. At the same time, the military is making clear that absolutely its military posture in the Asia-Pacific is entirely standard and normal and hasn't changed over the past week or month. I think as the military option comes clearer, and if we are going down that route, I think you'll get a number of warning indicators of both changes in military posture on the US side and on the North Korean side, and we haven't seen any of those yet.
So I don't actually know this answer. Why is China so invested in North Korea?
Well, for them it's an important buffer zone that holds Western alliances further back from the Chinese border, and it is their traditional ally and partner in Northeast Asia, and China doesn't have a lot of them, and because they believe that if there were to be a sudden collapse in the North Korean regime, there would be a problem both with North Korean refugees flooding across the border and a very uncertain future for North Korea itself, that the country might be reunified on terms that were not favourable to China's future.
And has China been playing any role in deterring North Korea's nuclear ambitions?
Oh yes, I think China has made very clear to Pyongyang that it does not believe there should be a nuclear North Korea, and that it would very much prefer a diplomatic solution to how things play out in future. They've been pushing definitely the freeze for the freeze bargain, in which North Korea would agree to freeze and cap its nuclear program, in exchange for a US limitation upon military exercises with South Korea, and possibly a smaller footprint on the peninsula in the long run. I don't think that's a good opening position for the US to accept, and I'm not sure that position is actually acceptable to either side at the moment. North Korea is, I think, making a sprint towards achieving a recognisable status as both a nuclear power and a power that has ICBMs. And I don't think the US is willing to trade away perfectly lawful treaty military exercises in exchange for a rogue state merely-capping a program.
Okay, and Australia's role in all of this, what should we be doing?
Well, we're not a primary actor in either the crisis or in. We don't have a history of involvement in the negotiations. The last wave of negotiations involved the six-party talks, and that didn't involve Australia. So I think what we should be doing is encouraging both parties to find a peaceful solution, but reinforcing with our ally our belief that if the North Korea, well, essentially what Prime Minister Turnbull did last week, reinforcing that if North Korea does lash out and attack the US, that we do see our role as a treaty partner to Washington.
Excellent. And my final question is, the better film, On the Beach or Dr Strangelove?
Well, I would probably watch Dr Strangelove over watching On the Beach, but I don't think either of them are terribly great portrayals of nuclear war. I think real nuclear war would actually happen in a far slower tempo, sort of step escalation pattern, which actually wouldn't make for a terribly good movie.
I'm sure someone will try. Thanks so much for joining me today, Rod, and thank you for watching. If you have any questions you'd like to ask ASPI, send us a tweet at ASPI_org.